Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock, let's go over the market, let's talk about what is happening to Tesla stock, what we can expect moving forward, and all of that good stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., well, I do have a membership section on YouTube. The link is just down below in the description of the video, where again, I'm constantly sharing my thoughts, posts, updates. How is this thing so glitchy every time I try to hit the middle mouse button? I'm constantly sharing my thoughts, posts, updates every single day as the market is open. Definitely check that out. That link is down below. For just $3 a month, you get access to the Tesla tier. $5 includes NVDA as well, which includes all my Tesla and NVIDIA updates. $7 includes non-Tesla, non-NVIDIA charts that I share when there's something worth sharing. And over the weekend, I do chart requests with members over on Discord, which, if you're curious, looks something like this. For instance, if you go here, you can see a lot of chart requests over here that I'm constantly sharing every single weekend with members that they request. Anyways, jumping into it, Tesla, I am recording a little bit early again. I do have to head out again, unfortunately, but it looks like it'll be closing somewhere around the mid to high end of the 320s, right? I will say around that 327-ish range, up about 3.5% on the day, which is honestly pretty impressive. But this is obviously all stemming off of two things, right? So first, I'll remove the fibs so it's not too confusing. This is stemming off of either the 15 or the 1 hour chart. We had this little bull flag that I actually talked about on Friday, which, a little bit premature. I was actually expecting it to go a little bit lower to about 309. Honestly, it ended up stopping at 313 roughly, so a few dollars above from what I was personally expecting the drop, if you will, to finish, essentially to set up this bull flag. It was a little bit premature, especially on the 1 hour. I expected it to be a little bit more deeper like this and then head higher. But hey, sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles. But nonetheless, the point is the fact that we did have this kind of bull flag E setup going into today, really, or early this week, which is playing out pretty nicely. And obviously the measured move on this bull flag, well, we've pretty much arguably played it out, where you can see it was something along the lines of this. So we've more or less played out the bull flag, I would say, to its extent. Now, the reason I had the Fibonacci's, and this is all short term. We'll go into the longer term stuff later, but this is all short term, is because, well, we're rejecting pretty much right at that green Fibonacci because, obviously after the earnings, we had a substantial fall. And, technically speaking, you can make an argument that this is sort of a, dead cat E sort of bounce, right? That looks kind of like this, right? You have this kind of, bear flaggy, dead cat E sort of bounce like this, right? I'll, bring the other one over here. Again, roughly, of course, right? My lines aren't to perfection, just to give you a rough idea, which again, if there's a place to reject at, well, the green fibs are, of course, that place, right? So, all eyes, in my opinion, over the next, pretty much the rest of this week are around these green fibs, starting at pretty much 328, which is roughly where we are now, up to about the very, very low 330s, right? This general vicinity is an area to watch for potential short-term rejection, right? If it does get a short-term rejection here, if we start really finding issues in this very high 320s to the very low 330s, then we can make our way back down at the very least to about the 323 area once again, which was a resistance back here, or all the way back down closer to 320 itself for short-term support. And from there, of course, we'll revisit it as it comes into, maybe we develop another bull flag into that range, right? Whatever the case may be, you start looking for potential continuation patterns or break of patterns to occur around that next level of support, and then you go on from there and so forth. Now, of course, if we make essentially what would look to be another like bull flaggy setup that kind of looks like this, back down to the support levels, well, that of course will then bring Tesla back up closer to the mid to maybe even the high 330s to get a retest of that overall pretty much the resistance of that massive daily pennant we are in. However, if we start losing levels, and especially if we start losing, in my opinion, below about 314, 313, then a visit to the bottom end of the large daily sort of pennant that we are in, which, close to 300 itself, would be very much a very real possibility and something to expect if, of course, it actually happens. So those are the main things I'll be watching for moving forward on the more shorter time frame, right? Of course. So let me go ahead and delete all these for now. And that's kind of what the Fibonacci's suggest, right? These are the same Fibonacci's where on the daily, I'm sure you remember, if I bring it up from over here, remember we had this massive fall. And I'm sure people remember me calling this a dead cat for quite some time. A lot of people simply weren't believing it, right? They're like, there's no way that's a dead cat. Well, in fact, it was. And guess what we rejected at? Pretty much exactly at the green fibs once again. It's a very powerful Fibonacci, right? It's usually where people get very bullish or bearish on the opposite side of the spectrum, when in fact that's exactly the opposite of what you should be. Now, again, the one I was just showing on the 1 hour, it's short term, right? It's short term. That's just for the next maybe, I don't know, a few days to a week of, price action potentially, right? But the overall perspective on the daily, like I've said many, many times, is, well, we're still in chop, right? When we were going into earnings, I mentioned many times how, here, a lot of people are expecting a breakout, but instead, it wouldn't surprise me with this much room in the pennant still that we essentially get contained within the pennant. We don't actually ultimately go anywhere still. Now, granted, we went all the way to the bottom end. That's not what I was expecting. I was expecting a move to about the 315 to 320s, but, I'm not going to predict every single dollar to perfection, of course. The overall, what matters is the fact that are we understanding the overall picture. In the overall picture, we're still in this very, very large daily pennant. There's still a lot of room in this large daily pennant. So, there still could be a lot of chop left, right? Is what essentially what I'm trying to say. We could still be waiting for a couple of weeks, honestly, at least, easily a couple of weeks as we get closer to the apex, if you will, of this pennant before we finally pick a direction. Now, if we end up coming closer to the apex of the pennant or, within the next 2 weeks, the main level to watch for an actual breakout, in my opinion, very high 330s to about 340, right? If we start breaking and closing candles above that, that would be very bullish. And I think the bulls will win. And that's where we start continuing higher. On the flip side, if, again, pretty much about 300, very low 300s, right? Somewhere around there, if we start losing that range, that's something else to watch out for. Or if you want to give a bit more leeway, then pretty much losing this low right here would be the level to watch for as well. Or even breaking this high up here, which is also the high 330s, like I said, close to 340, is another way to look at it, right? Once one of these levels gets snapped, that should be another sign that respective party, if you will, bulls or bears, well, they're winning, right? And we continue higher or lower. So the upside, if we break, again, pretty much 340 to make it simple, a move to about $400 really wouldn't shock me. About a $60 move to the upside. On the flip side, if we break below about 300-ish, $60 move to the downside is what I would expect. I expect about a $60 move as a resolution of this large pennant to the upside or to the downside. Again, 300 minus 60, about $240 roughly, 240, maybe 250, right? Somewhere around there, which is where this kind of gap over here sits, which I think would actually be an insanely good opportunity, personally speaking, if you take the Fibonacci's over here as well, from this low here to this swing high here. And if we do drop lower even further, well, that's where the green fibs sit, again, in the mid 240s roughly. That'll be like a pretty, in my opinion, good opportunity. Actually a phenomenal, I would argue, opportunity if presented. Whether or not we get that opportunity is a different story in and of itself, but worth mentioning as something to be ready for in case it actually does happen. Because again, you have to understand, if we do get this breakdown, if Tesla does make its way down to these levels over here, let's say 240, it's going to be very bearish. It's not going to go there just out of convenience for you to get nice cheap shares. That's not how it works. If it comes down there, that probably means something bad happened. Maybe Elon, maybe something with the business, or just overall macroeconomics themselves, or Trump, whatever. It'll be bad news that brings it there. It's not going to just drop there on good news just so you can conveniently scoop up shares. That's not how it works. So keep that in mind. That's important to understand that. And the reason I bring this up is because if, of course, that actually does occur, and if we do make our way to that level, you have these non-emotional, strategies already, ready to go and set in motion to just understand that. Remove emotion. I told myself if it comes down here, I'm buying. Congratulations, that's it. Even though it will be emotional. If we get down there, you'll be scared. Oh my God, I'm not buying that. No way. When in fact, right now we're looking at it with no emotions. We understand that that's a damn good opportunity, at least as of right now. Again, I'm just trying to understand, illustrate this example so that when and if the time comes, you're not scared, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because, it's very easy to be scared or to be, fear to be put into your head because of that drop. Because again, it's not going to happen off of good news. It'll happen off of bad news, and bad news equals fear, and fear equals I'm not buying. Just to make things clear. That's kind of what I see there. And then the final thing on the weekly is, well, we obviously have the exact same looking pennants, but it's worth to note that the MACD very flat for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 8-ish. 8 to 10 weeks, arguably, right? Very, very flat MACD here. Very, very flat, not really going anywhere. I can't remember the last time it was this flat for this long, right? I mean, maybe over here before a big move happened. So the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that there is a lot of pressure being built up right now in the stock while it's within this pennant. So once a breakout or breakdown finally does happen, it'll be probably pretty quick. And the move will be potentially even very, very aggressive, up or down. So it's just worth understanding and mentioning the fact that just be ready, right? Be ready. There is a lot of pressure being built up and kind of being, sandwiched in, if you will. So just, it's worth understanding that once the move finally occurs, it could be a pretty big one and a pretty quick one. So let's continue monitoring that, of course. In terms of options flow, Tesla, very mixed flow in the morning, very, very bullish. throughout the middle of the day, pretty bearish, and then it got very bullish again, and now it's kind of leaning into bearishness here, and a bit more bearishness as we head into the rest of the day, with a lot of, you can see 0801 puts coming in, some calls as well, but definitely more puts than calls coming in as well. Quite a bit of them as well that people are betting on for pretty much weekly puts right now. So let's see how that goes. But if there's a place to reject for Tesla stock, like I showed you on the 1 hour time frame with those green Fibonacci's, it's roughly around here, back down to about 323 to 320, at least in my opinion. So let's see how that goes. Let's see what comes out of this. The 1 hour SMI, you can see, is now towards the top end of the spectrum, which historically within this chop has shown at least a small move to the downside, if not a bigger one, but at least a small one, right? Each and every time it's happened, you can see we've had at least a small move to the downside or some consolidation, sometimes a much larger one, but it signaled that regardless is what I'm trying to say, I guess. So anyways, that's kind of what I got for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.